you would have to agree the answer.
Should the government silence voices that are politically inconvenient and that it disagrees with?
As a matter of course, in our domestic politics, of course not.
So why is the Biden administration creating a board to do that?
I believe this is based on the awareness that misinformation and disinformation is used as a weapon against the American
So was
people.
the Hunter Biden laptop misinformation?
I'm not familiar with all of the details of those stories.
I want to start by discussing President Biden's Disinformation Governance Board, or as many of us are calling it, the Ministry of Truth, that was recently announced. You said in 2019, quote, "The point of defending free speech is not that you expect everyone to be perfectly aligned with every speech act that is protected. It's that that's a fundamental American freedom. It's a huge part of what makes America America. And when that same flag was on my shoulder, I didn't think of the flag as something that itself, as an image, was sacred. I thought of it as something that was sacred because of what it represented. One of the very things it represented is the freedom of speech, and that's one of the reasons I served." Now, I got to say, Secretary Buttigieg, that's a sentiment I wholeheartedly agree with, and I think most Americans do as well. Simple question, do you still believe that?
Of course.
That freedom of speech should not be subject to censorship by the government?
Sure.
Why is the Biden administration then putting someone who is an obvious partisan, someone who is engaged in the repeated pushing of misinformation, putting them in charge of a board ostensibly directed at regulating the free speech of American citizens?
Let me begin by acknowledging that this is outside of my area of expertise and responsibility as a department. But I should also note that when I was wearing that flag on my shoulder, I was qualified in what the Navy calls information warfare, knowing that the use of misinformation—
Okay, with respect, we got limited time. So should the government be censoring and regulating the speech of American citizens, yes or no?
So that's a complex philosophical question. Obviously, we believe in free speech, but as you know, you don't have the right to yell fire in a crowded theater. If you regard that as the government regulating speech, then I suppose you would have to agree the answer.
Should the government silence voices that are politically inconvenient and that it disagrees with?
As a matter of course, in our domestic politics, of course not.
So why is the Biden administration creating a board to do that?
I believe this is based on the awareness that misinformation and disinformation is used as a weapon against the American people.
So was the Hunter Biden laptop misinformation?
I'm not familiar with all of the details of those stories. What I know is that Russia, notably, and other players too—
Except it wasn't Russia. It's an accurate laptop. Now the New York Times has acknowledged that after the election, and yet the head of this disinformation board happily pushed out that it was disinformation. That is a code word for things that are politically inconvenient. Let's turn to a different topic.